Wheezy has cemented himself as one of the top producers in the industry. He's produced for artists like Drake, Gunna, Future, Young Thug, Lil Baby, and pretty much everyone you can think of. And he's been responsible for some of the most legendary and iconic beats in hip hop for the past 5 or 6 years. So in today's video, we're gonna go in depth and break down what it is about Wheezy's production that keeps rappers obsessed with using his beats. In my eyes, rappers keep coming back to Wheezy's beats because he always has unique, fresh sounding stuff that creates a memorable experience for the listeners. And I think that the confidence that he has in his sound and his taste to do unique things is one of the main reasons why rappers like to work with him.
I feel like the producers know what's now, what the streets want, what the crowd want, and like what the fans really want to hear, and also what the artists want to hear.
Now, there's a few key elements to Wheezy's most iconic beats. First off, we've got the tempo. They're normally anywhere from 110 to 120 BPM. Second, they've always got unique and wavy melodies that stand out. And finally, they've always got some super bouncy and hard-hitting drums. And these beats can be pretty simple, but they sound unique, they hit hard, and they create the perfect canvas for a rapper to go on and make a hit song. Anyways, let's dive right in, starting with the melody. By far, some of my favorite melodies that Wheezy uses are the more orchestral, brass, anthem sounding loops.
Wheezy out of here. Wheezy out of here. Wheezy out of here. Wheezy out of here.
So to capture that vibe, we need to start with some big sounding brass. So I started with some stock Logic VST trumpets and trombones, and I laid down these anthemic kind of chords. So obviously right now this is not cutting it to be a real live brass orchestra. It definitely sounds like a cheap VST right now. So to go the extra mile, I ended up hiring a session musician to replay everything on a live trumpet and trombone, and he sent me back this. And this sounds a lot better and realistic, but for some reason I was just feeling like the VSTs kind of had this fullness that the real brass was kind of missing. So instead of choosing one or the other, I just combined them both to make it sound as big and full as possible. So anyways, I combined those both together to make this brass starter that's in my new Elements of Trap kit, which I'll go more into depth later on. Well, let's take a listen. So with that, we've already got a super solid foundation for an anthemic, wavy, wheezy kind of melody. But if you listen to Ski by Young Thug, you can hear some super anthemic staccato violins and strings, along with some ethnic pluck kind of sounds.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And I thought that adding some big string hits to this melody would really add to that orchestral kind of feeling that Wheezy loves to use in his beats. So I went into Expand 2 and grabbed this spiccato strings preset, and I put down this stabby pattern following the chords. Honestly, you could just stop right here and loop this and use this for the full beat. But one thing that I noticed on songs like Friends and Family by Nav is how the loop starts with these big, long chords, and then whenever the drums drop, it kind of changes to a more stabby brass section.
All of my albums on charts, all of my cars pushes start. I had no hope, I was just broke as a joke.
So just like on that song, I wanted to create a B section for our loop that kind of switches up without being a whole entire beat switch. So the first thing I did was take out the brass, and then I put a half speed on those violin hits. And I really like the stabby staccato kind of brass that was on the Friends and Family drop, so I went back into the Elements of Trap kit and grabbed this live brass phrase. On a lot of Wheezy's beats, you can hear these kind of unique synthy kind of sounds that kind of accent the beat and give it a more wavy sound that Wheezy's super known for. And recently, one of his frequent collaborators is Des Wright, who is known for his crazy analog synth sound. So I wanted to add some synthy kind of flavor, and to do that, I just grabbed a synth run from my Elements of Trap kit. And this sounds cool on its own, but a huge part of Wheezy's sound are his unique melodies, and one of the best ways that you can achieve that unique wavy kind of sound is through processing with a ton of effects. Just like the unique delayed synth flute kind of sound that Des Wright used on Embarrassed. So on top of that synth phrase, I put a guitar amp, reverb, some analog delay, a filter, and finally Portal to really give this a unique ambient kind of sound. And if you remember just a bit ago, I mentioned how Wheezy used some ethnic strings on the ski melody, and arguably one of the most iconic examples of Wheezy using these ethnic Asian kind of strings is on the beat for Gunna, Who You Foolin'.
Wheezy out of here. Wheezy out of here.
So to add some unique flavor to this melody, I grabbed this sliding Chinese pluck sound from Logic, and then I grabbed a live sitar phrase from my Elements of Trap kit. Finally, to finish off the melody, I added a synth from the Elements of Trap Analog Lab Bank, and then to fill it out just a bit more without adding any new sounds, I took the brass starter, half sped it, and then I put on a ton of effects to make it sound almost more like a gated pad. And now the loop is finished. So it's time to get into arguably the most iconic part of Wheezy's beats, his bouncy drums. And we're gonna go over some cool techniques that Wheezy uses in his drums in just a second. But if you like those live instrument starters that I just used in that loop, you've got to check out my new Elements of Trap kit. It's got over 2,000 loops, live instrument phrases, presets, MIDI, and all the drums that I'm gonna be using to make the beat in just a second. It'll be the first link in the description, so make sure to check that out. And you know what, while I'm here, I'll make a discount code. If you use the code Wheezy at checkout, I'll give you an extra 30% off of Elements of Trap. But anyways, back into it. Wheezy's drums are the backbone to his iconic sound. And after deep diving into his catalog the last few days, I found that the most essential part of Wheezy's drums are a short, hard-hitting 808, bouncy hi-hats, and on most of his biggest hits, simplicity. So let's dive in, starting with some bouncy hi-hats like the ones on Bad Bad Bad.
Rose gold seat on a fucking helicopter, double C, no Chanel, cause she's bad, bad, bad. Riding Kawasaki, I can cup you a new Rari, let you ride it, now you're rap, and you're bad, bad, bad.
As you can tell, those hi-hats have a super bouncy stop and go kind of feeling, so I wanted to do something similar in our beat. So I grabbed a hi-hat from the Elements of Trap drum kit and laid down this pattern. So one key thing I did on these hi-hats to make them a bit bouncier was I used 16th notes. So if you go in right here, this hi-hat normally would go either right here or right here. But if we move it one over, so it's a 16th note instead of hitting on those 8th notes, every other note right there, it gives it a much more bouncy pattern. So this is what it would sound like where they should be. So as you can see, it's kind of basic, but when you move it over, all of a sudden that part becomes a lot more bouncy. You see, it's like a little bit offbeat in kind of a good way. So I put a bunch of those in this pattern to give that bouncy, wheezy kind of vibe. From here, I wanted to add a clap and snare similar to the ones on Ski. On that song, you can hear that the claps are super simple, just playing right where they're supposed to. And then for the snares, there's some cool bounce accent snares with a couple rolls here and there. So I did something similar with a simple clap, and then I dragged in some snare roll midis from the Elements of Trap kit and got this. And if you notice, one tiny detail that I did to make this a little bit more unique without making it complex was I deleted the very last clap and replaced that with the snare just to give it a little bit of a different kind of texture and flavor for the ending of the pattern. And from here, I really wanted some reverbed out open hats and some hi-hat rolls with some effects similar to the ones on Friends and Family.
Wheezy out of here.
So I grabbed some more sounds from the drum kit, put some reverb on the open hat, and then on the hi-hat rolls, I added some reverb, delay, and flanger, so they have a different kind of texture than the main hi-hat. From here, I wanted to add Wheezy's iconic Vox sound.
At the time, I felt like it was missing the Vox. I just felt like it needed to be there. Like, it gives it that you know what I'm saying, that punch.
Finally, we gotta add a hard-hitting Wheezy 808.
I think the 808 is harder to beat. You gotta have your 808s right. 808s ain't right. It's just, you know what I'm saying, the beat ain't right.
So to start off, I grabbed this short, hard-hitting Zay 808 from the Elements of Trap kit, which you can hear Wheezy using on pretty much every one of his most iconic beats. And honestly, we could leave it like this and it would be nice and simple, but one really cool technique that he uses on the drums on Friends and Family is using two 808s to give it a different kind of texture and change it up in a way that isn't adding too much stuff to the beat and making it unwrappable.
All of my albums on charts, all of my cross pressure start. I had no hope, I was leaving, I just been taking it easy. Pockets they slappy, they cheesy, made me feel guilty for all the shit.
Going from that short, punchy 808 to that more long, distorted 808 really changes the whole energy and bounce of the beat. So to end off every 8 bars of our pattern, I deleted that short Zay 808 and I added this more long, distorted one from Elements of Trap that hopefully catches you off guard in a good way. With that, the beat is finished. But before I play the final product, if you've enjoyed this video or you learned anything so far, just hit that subscribe button so I can keep making more videos like this. But let's listen to it. I love this part. Melody switch up. I love that sitar in the back. Just a reminder, almost every sound that I used to make this beat was in my new Elements of Trap kit, which will be linked in the description down below. But that's it for me.